Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'm going to be a guinea pig for my friend's TBR. So this idea came about from me looking at other people's must-read books that they have to read in 2026. So many people post those lists online and then don't actually read those books. I'm the type of person who actually uses that as a checklist so I get through it in the year. And I was planning on picking somebody's list and reading books that they had not read yet from that list to tell them if they should or shouldn't read it. And I was talking to my friend Rachel about this. I don't know which one of us it was, but one of us realized Rachel's a really busy person. I should read her TBR to figure out if it's going to be worth it for her to read it. So this is my friend Rachel. We have been friends for 3 years now, as we were coworkers for a while. We now work at the same place, but we're no longer on the same team. And she has the busiest life. She is not only getting married in a couple weeks, she is also attempting to move across the country at the exact same time. It has been so much of a strain on her. We have desperately tried to help her out. You know, one extra way I can do that is by figuring out which books on her TBR she should or should not read. So I told her to send me a list of books off of her TBR that she would be interested in me taste testing for her, and she realized, what if I did one book for each of the old, new, borrowed, and blue things for a wedding? And so that's exactly what we're doing here today. I have 4 books I'm going to be reading, one for each of those categories, and I have why Rachel had those on her TBR. My first book is going to be our old book, which is Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This is the oldest of the ones that she picked out for me. This is a nonfiction that is about a disaster that happened on Everest, and the author was actually there for it. So it is a first-person account of that. This is one of the oldest books on her TBR. Her dad read this and enjoyed it, and then her husband, which they're already civilly married, they are doing the big ceremony at the church in a couple of weeks. So her husband has already read this, really loved it, and is wanting her to read it. She has not been reading any nonfiction lately, so hopefully we can get her back into it. Then we have the new book. The bluest book on the list she gave me was also the newest published, so I decided to take new to mean a book I bought new for myself. So I went out and bought The Dream Hotel by Leila Leilani. This is a dystopian science fiction speculative story. This is kind of like Minority Report meets Nosedive from Black Mirror. People are surveilled intensely, they are given a risk score, and even if you haven't done anything wrong, if the government thinks your risk score is high enough, they can lock you away for it, and that's exactly what happens to our main character. I'm really excited for this one. This is the only one that I actively had pretty high on my TBR, so I really think that this is going to be a favorite of mine. And Rachel found this book just from scrolling around on Goodreads, didn't really know what it's about, and then her husband was given it as a gift recently, so she doesn't even know what this book is about, so you're welcome for telling you. Then for a borrowed book, I have borrowed from the library, both on audiobook and physically, The Ministry of Time, Kellyanne Bradley. This is a very popular sci-fi book that is about people being taken out of the past and brought into the present, and our main character is someone who is assigned to take care of this man who came from 1847 and sort of assimilate him. This is one that I've had my eyes on for a long time, not sure if it's going to be for me or not, and I just had it on Libby hold just in case I would ever need to read it for a video, and I was totally right. Rachel got this as a book of the month pick a long time ago and was interested in the sci-fi aspect of it, but when she heard that it was more romancy, she pushed it down her TBR, as it's a genre she has been burnt out on. I am also kind of in that same boat, so I think we're gonna have similar experiences with this book, so we'll see. And the last book is the book that I knew the least about. That is our blue book, which is Meet the Newmans. So this is about a sitcom that started in the 50s and has overstayed its welcome well into the 60s, following the actors of that show as they are gearing up for the finale and they want to do something different and big. And Rachel thinks she found this book from an author's newsletter, and she was excited for this because she thought it sounded like Taylor Jenkins Reid's Famous Women books. So with the wedding going on, she's been on a book buying ban and has been actively only really reading the books that she already owns. So this has been in Libby purgatory holds for her for a long time. So I'll be letting her know if she should cancel her hold or make sure she gets it as soon as possible. So let's get reading. Hello, it is time for our first book of Rachel's vlog. Hi, Rachel. And I am reading The Ministry of Time. I am listening to this on audiobook. So our main character is a person who has worked for, I literally forgot her name, but our main character, her mother was a refugee from Cambodia, or at least an immigrant when there was political turmoil there. She, because of that, ended up working in like foreign policy type stuff, working with refugees. And that's sort of her field, working in the UK in the government. She gets hired for this new position. She doesn't really know what it is, but it's a very big deal and secretive. And it turns out the UK government is taking people who have died out of history right before they die and bringing them to the present day. And they need people to be handlers of them. So those people are going to be living with the person from history and trying to teach them everything about the 21st century in order for them to sort of like blend in and be normal here. And the government is trying to monitor, like, can these people actually physically survive the process of time travel, or is the timeline like going to reject them? And so our main character has been paired with this man from 1847 who he was a naval officer and Arctic explorer. And that's how he ended up dying. He ended up dying in the Arctic on a doomed mission where I think everybody ended up dying. He is, trying to adjust to being here. He had to stay in the house, and then like they're able to move a little bit further and do more things and everything. And he's learning about how much culture has changed. I was really skeptical when this was a popular book. I think I had heard like too much of people like loving the romance of this. I don't know. I love time travel. Time travel is a huge buzzword for me. I try to consume everything I can that has to do with time travel because I think when done correctly, it is the most interesting narrative trope and hits on emotional notes that I love a lot. Regret or perfectionism, making other choices. The question of like, is everything supposed to be a certain way, or is it something you could change? Just all the different permutations of time travel really interest me. And I think I was wary when this was so popular because I've read like several like popular where it's like someone just like accepts to live life the way it is, like where it has like the same kind of quotidian message over and over again, that I've just read the same type of thing. Honestly, by this being as popular as it was, I was under the impression that it might not interest me because it might be too like route one. The thing that I want to say, like the number one word I would use to describe this book is charming. This book is very British. Like it feels very in line with British comedy I have seen. And it's really reminding me because of the nature of like a person from the past and a person from the present talking to each other. It's really reminding me of Horrible Histories and BBC Ghosts. I've not seen the US Ghosts. I've seen the majority of BBC Ghosts. I adore that show. And I think that the sort of conversations of like trying to tell a person from the past, like how things are in the present, like it's had that same feeling to it. And I think it's been so fun. It has been empathetic towards the people from the past in terms of those conversations, because obviously those people are like living in a society that is not as like welcoming and accepting as we are now. I think it's doing the right amount of, hey, person from the past, we don't talk like that anymore, to, oh shoot, you're a person who was taken away from time and now this shift is going to be traumatic, and like we're having fun correcting them while also being empathetic to, hey, you didn't ask for this and you are now kind of a prisoner and everybody you've ever known is dead. Part of what's making this feel like BBC Ghosts is that there are also other pairs that they are interacting with. So there's like a woman from the 1600s, there's a man who was a soldier in World War I and all that sort of thing, which I think it's World War II in Ghosts, but like, the woman from the 1600s is reminding me of the woman who was burned at the stake in Ghosts. Oh my God. The actress's name is Katie. She was on season 9 of Taskmaster. Guys, what the hell is their name? I think it's fun. And also the way that it's talking about time travel, the way that our main character like doesn't know everything. And she's like kind of trying to get information from this secretive operation that she doesn't know a whole lot about to try to figure out like what they're doing. I just think it's been really engaging so far. And I've been wanting to listen to it more than some other audiobooks that I've listened to lately. So I'm having a good time so far. I don't think this is gearing up to be like a new Fable favorite of all time, but I'm just enjoying myself, and that's exciting. I know this is the last place you saw me, but it is so rainy outside that this is the only place with good lighting, so you're just gonna have to deal with it. So I have finished The Ministry of Time, and I have spent an inordinate amount of time away from it before giving you my final thoughts. It was really hard for me to put into words, to really describe what happened in this book. Not in a plot way, like I could tell you what happened, I just mean like I was really engaged with the first part of the book, and as the book went on, I very slowly became less engaged, and it became hard for me to put a finger on why. So reading other people's reviews of this and their own experiences helped me pick out what I felt about this book. So the reason why I couldn't remember the main character's name of this book is because the main character does not have a name, and the name of the man that she is the bridge for is Commander Graham Gore, who I could not tell what his last name was, if it was Gore or Gall, for a long time based on the narrator's accent. He was a real life person, by the way, if I didn't mention that before, or I don't think I knew that. The other time travelers are just made up people, but Commander Graham Gore is a real life human being with a Wikipedia page and a daguerreotype that they say is hot. To which I say, where? But I think that this book has a fun sense of humor and kind of dances between a bunch of different tones, and ultimately I do think this book struggles to stick the landing a little bit because it has so many different subjects it's trying to encapsulate. And I understand that, like, yeah, it's a complicated thing to actually try to bring people into the present from the past. And I think that this really addresses that issue that I feel like a lot of people would have with time travel, and time travel fiction does not work with enough. That it would be extremely jarring to bring someone from the past, and how much you would have to do to make them appear to be at least somewhat normal. It also takes time to compare that to immigration, but it doesn't go the whole way there. It talks about racism in a way that a lot of time travel science fiction decides to ignore, and I think that that was interesting. Honestly, the relationship in here, I did end up getting behind it, even though there is not an ounce of realism to it. You're telling me a man who spent all of his life since the age of 11 on ships away from women would be okay even after a year of training being in a relationship with a mixed race woman in 2020 whatever. There's no way he's that good in bed. It's just not gonna happen. You really do have to take it with a grain of salt in that regard. As a person who I don't think I am able to all the time, I was able to. I do think the end just got messy as we really do ramp up in action, and I definitely found myself a little bit caught unawares. I just wished that we had maybe taken out one or two conversations or one or two things earlier in the book in order to make room for more of the stuff that had to happen at the end. I still think that this was compelling, but it was never as compelling as it was in the first half. I think I'm gonna give this book like a 3.75. This is such a hard book to wrap my mind around because I realized that I didn't care as much as I had previously, and it was hard to put my finger on when that happened or why, but I think it's just a lot going on. This was a really ambitious take that I don't necessarily think was nailed on the first go. Is she a debut? She's a short story author. I'm actually curious to see what this author does in the future, and if stuff gets really good reviews, I would definitely be interested in picking it up, because I do think that this was a look at time travel, something that I try to consume a lot of media about in a different, interesting way, balancing dark stuff with humor and not really feeling like a mishmash of tones. So for Rachel, I would say this is solid. I actually think that you would have a chance of liking this more than I do. I wouldn't push it up your TBR, and I would not push it off your TBR. Oh, and one more thing, I just turned the camera off. This does have a bunch of like interludes from Graham's perspective back in his time, and I don't actually think that like added anything to the book. And that's like more time that we could have cut down on, or maybe just like there's a lot of like mundanity that happens because they're kind of like locked in the house together for a while that could have been trimmed down to maybe flesh out more of the other things going on. Okay, anyway, next book. Hello. Oh, let me get the book. Hold on. I'm reading The Dream Hotel. I bought this myself. I went to Blackbird's Books and Coffee in Raleigh. I do love that bookstore. I think they've downsized their number of books, which is really sad, but they have such a good collection. I wish that they had been open when I was in college because I would have been going there pretty frequently, but I think they opened like right around the time I graduated. Anyway, The Dream Hotel is about our main character. I don't know if it's pronounced Sarah or Sarah. In this future, algorithms have kind of taken over everything, and we've had so much technology that is supposed to be making our lives more convenient that involves taking data from us, collecting a profile and making all these things about you and all these invasive things about your life, all of this surveillance. So you can get information about anybody, and all of these companies have your information. But there is a specific company that has like a lot of it. And I think that they're supposed to be the stand-in for Google. There is a specific event that happened maybe a decade ago or so that a lot of people died at. And the people in Congress were like, well, we knew all these things about him. We knew that he was at risk. We should have prevented this. So they end up putting some laws into place that are basically saying that they are going to be monitoring everyone for potential upcoming criminal behavior. And it's going to give you a score of your risk. And if your risk score gets too high, they are going to put you in a place to kind of chill out, right? But it's prison. It's just prison. And they're like, oh, you'll be here for like 21 days for this thing you didn't do. And then it turns out that nobody ever stays there for that short of a time. Our main character was traveling. She was coming back from a work trip out of the country, and she ended up saying something that sounded like it was a lie, but it wasn't, to the people at TSA, essentially. And so they set her aside and they're like, oh, you actually have a high risk score because you lied to us. And then it's because it's this, and then it's because it's that. And she's like, well, what did I do? They're like, well, you're at risk. And she's like, what did I do that made you think I'm at risk? And they're like, well, your cousin who you haven't spoken to in 20 years is an arsonist, right? And she's like, yeah, I haven't talked to him in 20 years. I don't know this guy. Oh, well, you did something a million years ago that does this. I am adoring this book. I want to say, I had been previously interested in this. Of the books on Rachel's list, this was the one that I was most personally interested in. It was like, I was excited to like buy this and everything for myself, but because of all of the TBR shaping I've been trying to do lately, I wanted to make sure this is actually something I wanted to buy. So like the Goodreads score of this book is not good. And so I was like, oh, maybe not, but wait, I like speculative fiction. Like this sort of book doesn't necessarily always have the highest rating. And then I ended up doing what I said I would do as one of my goals out of my prediction video. If you haven't watched that, please go watch that because I care about that video a lot. One of the things that I realized is that like if I sat down and read a page of a book before buying it, that I would have a much better chance of figuring out if I was going to like it. Because some books that I own, I could tell from the beginning that I wasn't going to like it that much. So I ended up reading the first page of like the front matter and then like first real page of the book. And I was like, yep, this writing style is for me. We're getting along well. This is going to be for me. I'm getting along with this so well. It's reminding me of Chain Gang All-Stars, but like less action. It is kind of told in a piecemeal way. So even though that one is an ensemble piece, this one is one character. It feels that sort of we're getting all of this information from different places. It has that sort of scrapbooky feel to it almost. It is talking about so many different aspects of things that we have to be afraid of now. The prison system and how it is so hard to get out of it once you are in it, regardless of what you did. I think it is really reminding me of things that I learned reading Just Mercy earlier this year, which is a nonfiction from a civil rights lawyer who argued in front of the Supreme Court multiple times and was trying to help people who were on death row or children who are sentenced to life. And the lessons I learned from that about how the prison systems work and how they want to keep you in it so bad. This is talking about that a lot. And now it's taking at an angle of not only are they profiting off off of you, like private prisons do now. They are also stealing your information even more than the general public. Technology has evolved so much that is unavoidable, essentially. Like, you have to go fully off the grid in order to not have all of these things monitored about you. Like, our main character's job, it kind of feels like Severance, where she is having to watch AI videos over and over and over again, and she has to tell the computer whether it is real or not, or she doesn't know. Just that alone is such like a really poignant situation to be in. They are taking all this information from her. Like, they're constantly monitoring like her dreams and all of that. Like, it's the way that it's describing the technology, I think, is really interesting, and how it is sort of like wide sweeping. Like, there's a lot of sci-fi, like, what if sort of scenarios like this, right? Where it's only one technology that's changed everything. But in this, it's an entire system. And that feels very reminiscent of what's going on in the world right now. And I love this book already. I don't know how far I'm in. I think I'm 125 pages in. I think it's around 300 pages. And I do think like focusing on just the one character, I think is going to help. But we have like the small group of characters around her in the prison that she is like talking to and everything. And it's good. It's interesting getting everybody's stories. And I just think the way that it's delivering information is really interesting. I hope it sticks the landing. I don't want to look online about why people don't like this book. Maybe they think it's hammering the points home too hard, or maybe they didn't like the ending or something. I don't want to know. I want to have a good time with this book that I know that people don't love. It is in a world in which like your data is everything. Like, this seems so important to be reading right now. This could be a favorite, guys. I really hope it is. Hi. I finished The Dream Hotel. I saw that this book had such a low rating. I only knew that this book had such a low rating of the books that Rachel gave me. I didn't notice that the other two fiction books I'm reading also had low ratings. That maybe is why Rachel picked them for me. I was so in love with the beginning of this book that I was just like, I can't imagine why this is so lowly rated. Is it just because it's speculative fiction stuff and that I tend to like that more than the average person? What's going on with this book that it has such a low rating? And I don't know why it has such a low rating, but I do understand it not being as high as I thought it was going to be, because I was like, man, you know what? I bet this ending isn't going to land. And I do think that the worst part about this book is the ending, and it's not the content of the ending, if that makes sense. It is the abruptness of it. It is just over. It's like the author just ran out of things she wanted to say, like politically, and so just like left off of the plot. Like, there's a resolution to some degree with our main character. We know what our main character is going to try doing next, to some degree. But I think a lot of readers, myself included, would have liked to have an ending that had more of a resolution of what is happening at this specific facility. But I also do think like this kind of almost makes it more like Chain Gang All-Stars, where it's like just a moment in time sort of sliced out, and it doesn't give you like an answer for the situation. It does not resolve everything about the world. It just shows you a particular character or characters situation. I know this is not nearly as loved as Chain Gang All-Stars, but I would recommend this for fans of it, because that's one thing that it reminded me of. There is a specific section in the middle of the book that really reminded me of the early timeline parts of The Handmaid's Tale. I really, really enjoy this book. This is up there with my favorite books I've read so far this year. Even if I wanted more from the ending, I do think that this isn't like the most character-focused book in the world in terms of like my favorite things. Those tend to be the things that I get along with more. But I thought that we had enough of the character to sustain the story. All of the different like themes and things that I was talking about, I really got a lot out of. Honestly, this is a book that I would want a sequel to, which is wild for me to say. That's really unlike me. But I think that there's like more to plumb from this world. There's more perspectives that I would like to continue seeing. Like, I don't know, I kind of see that in kind of a parable of the sower type way. If you want to really enjoy this book, I need you to know that your questions are going to be answered, right? Like, we get a lot of information about this world, but the difference is that, like, this is not a book that has a hugely resolving plot, and I think you might be able to tell by the length of it. Did I also talk about how this has mixed media elements to it? How sometimes in between chapters there are inserts of like transcripts and reports and stuff like that, and I think that has a really interesting added layer of us getting more information about like the leadership in charge here. And I think that the ending said something really interesting about rebellion in trying to push back against a force and the sort of methods that they will use in order to shut people up. This is a book that is about how difficult it is to be removed from the American prison system because it is looking for ways to keep you in and it profits off you, and connecting it to how much we are being surveilled by technology and seeing how we can extract more different resources from prisoners than we already do. I think that if you want to read something that has to do with the prison industrial complex and also has to do with the frightening AI and stuff, technology that's going on right now, I think this is a really important read, and I don't want to know why people don't like it. I actually don't want to know. So Rachel, if you're still interested in reading this book, knowing that it does not have a big adventure plot to it, which I don't think I went in assuming it would, I think you're going to get along with this because I really enjoyed it. So I think it's still worth keeping on your TBR. And if you would like to borrow my copy, I'd be happy to loan it to you. So behind on vlogging, but I have gotten to the, I think, 120-ish mark of 280 something of Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer, which it's so fucking funny about this book is that I had been thinking that I was going to be reading Into the Wild for so long, and then I got the book and I was like, wait, this isn't Into the Wild. And then it took me several days of having the book to realize it says, from the author of Into the Wild. I guess I want to know why he decided to name 2 books something similar, and then, like, to my knowledge, he never wrote another book that had that title. He did not set out with the intention of writing this book. So Jon Krakauer, he wrote articles for a magazine called Outside. He was a climber when he was younger and had given it up because the people who do all of the big bad hikes, like, it's a very rigorous life. He was approached with this assignment talking about the commercialization of climbing Everest, and this is in 1996 that he goes out on assignment, and he's like, actually, I wanted to climb Everest when I was younger, and then when I thought I couldn't do it, I thought I was too cool for it, because like Everest is the one that everyone wants to do, and that's not really the most complicated one. And when he actually had the opportunity to do it, because he's not one of the people who would have enough money to be able to do it by himself, he had to get, sponsored through his job to be able to do it. He was like, okay, let's do it. And so he ends up in 1996 going on this expedition with the New Zealand climbing guide Rob Hall and several other people. And on May 10th, 1996, there was a storm that came through that was very unexpected that killed several people. And he ended up writing his article for Outside that ended up detailing the disaster. But that was something that had a quick turnaround time. And it turns out that there were things that were wrong in that. So he ended up writing a fuller length book where he did more research and cross-checking his own memory and has corrected things from the original article. One cool thing about this is that every chapter has these, like, I don't know what those are called, like the illustrations, like the stamps that you make where you like cut out of a block. This is not the driest nonfiction I've ever read, but it's not the most engaging narrative nonfiction I've ever read. It's not until I checked the chapters because it has the timestamps on them, and it's not until page 170 that we get to the day of. And right now we've got a lot of background about climbing Everest, about the people who are on this expedition specifically, but not only that, the other people who are on the mountain. Because of the commercialization of climbing Everest, there are so many people who are trying to climb Everest during peak season at the exact same time. It feels like talking about hubris to me. I'm interested to see like what the takeaways that the author wants to say at this end of this book is, because like one of my first reactions to reading this is that like extreme climbing must be for men who have gotten bored of golf. You know how like men have all these hobbies that just like take them away from the home for many hours and they just get to do whatever and not be around. This guy talking about how when he went climbing on a glacier and was gone for weeks at a time, I was like, okay, and where was your family? And basically he had said that both him and his wife, if I'm not mixing it up with other people, because there's so many people in this book, because it's real life, it's not something straight up, but like I do think maybe we could have cut down on some stuff to make it like a little bit more clear, but I understand he's trying to give like the most accurate thing possible. That like him and his wife were both former climbers. She had to quit due to an injury and he quit because he didn't want to have that lifestyle anymore. You know, she found it really difficult when he said he wanted to go to Everest when so many people have died doing it. It's insane to me that people would be doing something like that as their hobby when they are leaving, and it's mostly men who are leaving their wives, who are then the primary breadwinner and also completely taking care of their kids. And you're like, oh no, I just gotta go climb a mountain. Like, it's not like mountains aren't cool. It's not that I'm saying that you shouldn't be able to do that. It's just that these people who have taken it to such an extreme that they're just like completely ignoring other responsibilities that they have. Like, it feels like just another style of running away. And I think we see that in some of the people who have been described in this. We are talking about the commercialization and how at the very beginning of climbing Everest and all these mountains, it was, you know, the people who were the most talented at climbing who could get up there. And then very quickly afterwards, the first person to ever do the 7 summits, so the 7 tallest mountains on the 7 continents, was a rich man who had like other people basically take him up there. We also have like how much people are getting like charged to go up into Everest because like, hey, they can't sustain this many people. Like, they had to start charging people like significant fees to be able to do Everest. So that means that only rich people are getting to do it. There was an interesting person that we were talking about. She is a rich woman, like a socialite, who one of her hobbies is climbing, doing the 7 summits, and like she was being documented for CNN, and she brought like TVs and magazines and everything with her, and like had all of these people with her carrying all of her stuff. However, like the people that she was with like didn't really have a problem with her because like as much as she was like really self-centered, she was also like really nice. She didn't bring the vibe down and mostly gave credit where credit was due. Like, she was like, yeah, it's impressive of me to be up here, but I'm not the person with the skills in order to get me up here. Like, I couldn't do it by myself. We are talking about just how much danger it is to go up there, even to the Sherpas, the people who live there. There are several base camps that are on Everest, and there's a man who lived at altitude his entire life and then literally just suddenly got sick, and even bringing him down significantly below where they were didn't do anything to save him. We're also seeing how people who are inexperienced being there is making things more dangerous for other people because then they have to use their limited resources in order to be able to take them down the mountain. We're seeing the like not great conditions that the people who stay on base camp and etc. are going to. Also just like stumbling across dead bodies. Like, it's a very real threat. There's the very famous quote of like, why do you want to climb Everest? Because it's there. I think that this book is giving a good look into what the actual real dangers were. And I'm interested to see how much of this disaster that I know nothing about is just based on nature and how much of it ends up being caused by commercialization. Is there something that the author wants to have been done better? Or is it just a disaster that could not have been helped no matter who was up there. I locked in last night and was able to just get through my pages, but I have been on my phone all freaking day. I don't know what it is. I just haven't wanted to get off my phone. So I've left this until the last minute, and I would actually rather save my sleep, even though I know I am not going to be able to sleep tomorrow early because the Canes are playing. So I've been talking, my last several videos have been talking about the Canes. We are in the Stanley Cup. We are in the Stanley Cup run. And I just want to talk about Saturday's game was insane. This was game 3. It is the most ridiculous hockey game I've maybe ever witnessed. Austin and I went to a bar. I didn't vlog any of this because I was just living my life. We ended up leaving the bar when we were down 3-0. Like a little bit into the second period, I think. We ended up driving home, and by the time we like sit down and everything, we were losing 4-0. And then Austin like puts the score in his phone, and we were just gonna go watch something else. And then we see 1-4. Couple seconds later, 2-4. Austin turns on the radio. Immediately, it turns 3-4. We are running, screaming around the apartment. Like, what? I try to run for him, and he just runs away. It's a very funny thing to see Austin watch sports. You cannot be within like a several foot radius of him because he is like a nervous ball of energy. Like he will actively dodge you. He decided we're going for a walk. So we ended up going for a regular walk around the neighborhood while listening to it. And like things are heating up. And he's like, let's just keep walking for a little bit longer. And they end up getting to 4-4 and we run screaming outside. It is 11 o'clock at night. And I hope we didn't wake anybody up. But we just were like, hey, let's just keep walking. Keep walking. And we did. We kept walking until, the third period ended and now it's tied. We kept walking for an entire overtime period. And like we took like 1 or 2 breaks and went in. It ended up going to a second overtime. And we actually lost on a rebound off the wall, which sucks. So now we are down 2-1 against Vegas, who are the villains in this story on more levels than just me being a Canes fan. And I'm like, I just need them to win. I know it is a long shot now. We were the favorites going into it because of our run. But we just have 2 teams that play kind of similarly. So we haven't lost 2 games back to back since January. We're knocking on wood again. So hopefully we'll do okay and go Canes. I have finished Into Thin Air. I don't have much more to say about this than what I already talked about before. I think as the book went along, we had fewer sections that were dedicated to talking about the individual people. And then it is literally just, we climbed from here to here this day. It took us this long. And then we had to go to bed. And it was hard for me to go to bed that night because it was cold. Like it is a very to the point, non-editorialized book, and it really seems like that was the point of this. I do not know Jon Krakauer's style outside of this book, but from just the contents of this book, he makes it clear that the article he ended up publishing, people got mad at him for, specifically the people who were on the trip and their families. There's one major thing he got wrong in his article because he hadn't like cleared it with other people, and he had like messed up the timeline of somebody's death. Like, I understand the family being really upset about that. However, it really feels like somebody must have really given him a lot of grief. Either he was purposefully trying to do this as factual as possible, not inserting himself into the narrative at all, or he faced so much backlash from the people that he knew that he was like, I need to write this as coldly as possible. And it's okay. It's not the coldest thing I've ever read in my life. I've definitely read nonfiction that reads more like a textbook than this does, but this is not a particularly interestingly written book. I really think that he was trying to avoid pointing fingers. And so like, he is not like, these are the reasons why things went wrong. He just describes what happened. And it's also, there was not one singular thing that caused everything to go wrong. That wouldn't be a very interesting story if it was, but like, he's not interested in pointing the blame at certain things. I was expecting this book because it says it's about, the Mount Everest disaster. as if there's only ever been one. Crazy, but I understand that this book was only published like a year after the event happened, so it probably would have been at least in the news. I personally like my nonfiction to be more narrative and to have an authorial voice and have the author be part of the story. And this really was trying to remove himself as much as physically possible. And therefore, like, I also just did not feel very emotional about what ended up happening in like, even though what happens to these people is terrible. There are multiple people who are left for dead. There was a guy who was left for dead multiple times and he survived the whole thing. I would never trust another human being again. And that's terrible. I just don't think that this book is written in a way that made me like feel connected to these people or like really want someone to survive or something like that. If you are interested in this book because it is talking about Everest and you want to learn about what people have to do to actually summit it, like it just physically while they're there, not like the training they have to do ahead of time, just physically what like the path is and everything and what the base camps are like in the 90s. It's been 30 years. It's literally been, oh my God, it has been 30 years and 1 month to the day since these people died. I actually knew I was going to read this book like on the 30-year anniversary of this happening. If you're into it because of that, I think yes. If you're into it because you are a true crime focused person, this is not as interesting as most true crime is written. If you are someone who is wanting narrative nonfiction, like I am, that's really what I'm looking for in a nonfiction. This is not the last book I would point you toward, but it's not close to the first. So Rachel and everyone else, depending on what you're looking for going into this book, I would vary how much I would recommend it. But I don't think that this is a book that's really gonna be sticking around in my brain for a long time. So let's get to my last book. Hello, it is like 95 degrees outside, and I have gotten 30% of the way through Meet the Newmans, which, interestingly enough, both me and Rachel missed something really key about the synopsis. It turns out that this family is not only a family on screen, they are also a real-life family. So this is being set in like early mid-60s. So this show, Meet the Newmans, has been going on for 12 years now. At the very beginning, it was like the most successful sitcom on TV. Very I Love Lucy. It is that family-friendly sitcom where like everybody has a very traditional role going on. And the person who is also the writer-director is Del, who plays the dad, who is also the dad, and that's his actual name. Like, they do not change their name between their character and their real name. So this has a different dynamic than I thought I was going into. Like, I thought it was going to be about, you know, this group of actors who don't really like each other anymore, like throwing caution to the wind for this last finale. Like, but no, it's a little bit that like the dad has been writing what he wants their lives to be, but it's a little bit more that they're like just in the public eye. Like, there's a little bit of the conversation that's been happening around like family vloggers of like kids trying out things and then the parents forcing that to be in content. Like, that's sort of a conversation there. Because they are actually a family, they are more tightly connected than like just actors. Dinah, who is the mother, and she's like the perfect housewife, but in reality, she's an actress who left home when she was a teenager, was successful in like big time movies with like real life movie stars. She meets Del and they have like a whirlwind romance, get married, have kids immediately. Being an actress, she has a very different life than having this trad wife look. She also is supposed to be America's home cook, but she can't cook for shit. There's Del, who is the patriarch, right? But he also is the director and the writer of the show, so like he won't let the other family members really contribute to what ends up going into an episode. And then the sons are Guy and Shep. I believe they're 21 and 19. Guy's like the nice one and Shep is like the adventurous one. Guy, it turns out, is actually gay. He's literally living with the guy who is his boyfriend, but is keeping it a secret that they're actually boyfriends. But he's like struggled to have things that are his own. And now they are wanting to end the show with the finale of him marrying this girl. And because there are these things coming out about him being gay, the dad wants him to marry this girl in real life, even though she's actually in a relationship with the other brother in real life. So Shep is actually a musician. He like sings on the show, and he is like a recording artist as well. And is literally, they say that the only thing that's currently topping him in the charts is the Beatles, which just came to America like a couple months ago as of the beginning of this book. At the very beginning of this book, Del gets the news that he does not disseminate to his family, that sponsors are pulling out and they're gonna have to end the show. Dinah, at the same time, gets interviewed by this female reporter who comes at her very antagonistically, being like, hey, like, you don't actually live this life that you say you live. Aren't you setting women back? And I know that somehow the reporter is going to be involved in the making of the last episode. I do think that this book would have been a little bit more interesting if it wasn't about a family and it was more people who are disparate and don't necessarily have to have a connection to each other. Because this is more like, you know, the dad, you know, grabbing for control almost. I also have just noticed that I feel like the way that social change is being talked about in this, it feels anachronistic to me as a person who's not an expert in the 60s. Not the ideas that they have, but the physical way that they talk about everything. Specifically, one of the gay characters says, but we're stuck in 1964. It's like he's a time traveler. And I don't 100% think that this book feels, it's so weird to me that the author was like, let's have the family be a real family and also have the boy be as popular as the Beatles. Is there any like historical basis of that really happening? Of like somebody being on a sitcom and also having like a chart topper? But like there's things I find very interesting about, you know, pushing the boundaries of TV and stuff like that, and like censorship and old Hollywood and everything. So there's stuff to grab onto. This isn't like my favorite thing in the world, and I wish it was making different decisions, but we are at a turning point in the book where like the status quo has just been broken at the point that I got to at the 30% mark. So I'm ready to see how this book lets go, and I want this book to go big, and I hope it does. Now I'm gonna watch Game 5 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. We are 2-2. This is getting stressful. And after all that, the Carolina Hurricanes are your Stanley Cup champions 2026, exactly 20 years after their first ever Stanley Cup, with Rod Brind'Amour as the captain and now the coach. He is only the fourth person in history to do that. And all of those other people played before my parents were even born. It's been awesome. It was such a cool experience to go to the watch party. There were so many fun little bits that they had. We just had a really great time. I feel like I felt more joy in the beginning of the playoffs, and then we just did well enough that I was like, oh, well, of course we're gonna win, and then we won. And I was like, it was less of a surprise, if you know what I mean. I thought I would give you my final update for this vlog on Meet the Newmans, doing the playoff puzzle as I am now deeming it, which I just was doing this during the playoffs. Do I have to do a puzzle every playoffs or whatever? I'm not sure. So I finished up the audiobook on my drive home. I think the performance was good. There was nothing really that was amiss with it. I actually turned it up way high. Like, I think I had it on 2.7 near the end there, just because like it felt so slow. And I don't know if that's the book was dragging on or that the narrator was reading it slow. I'd have to check the page count of the books. I don't think this book is a standout. I just didn't really find anything that felt different from something I've read before. It just kind of felt like someone who had just taken some sort of class or read something about like civil rights or women's rights or whatever, and is like, I need to write a thing about this. It kind of felt like it was trying to do an all-encompassing thing. Because it's about wanting to move the show from the 50s into the 60s by way of the sons and wife of this man who has like written their life a certain way. But he's not an unloving father, which was also kind of interesting, but did feel a bit saccharine. He's way more receptive than I would imagine a normal person would be. And in that way, the book kind of felt like everything was kind of wrapping up with a bow. And that's kind of one of my questions about this book. Was this book going for this on-the-nose approach because that's what those TV shows were like? Or did the author not realize that that's what she was doing? Even though I agree with a lot of what it's saying on its face, I just don't think it was told in a very compelling way. I thought there was some bloatedness to it. There was definitely some chapters that I thought we could cut down on. It doesn't feel like it's nuanced. It doesn't feel subtle. It feels like someone's like wanting to teach you the basics, like 101 of feminism. I did not buy that this final show was like as impactful as they were really trying to do. It was so on the nose that they close out the show with Dinah quoting Betty Friedan to the camera. Like saying, as Betty Friedan once said, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's not good writing. Like, they were really trying to sell me on how well written this script was. They kept saying, oh my God, the script was incredible. And I'm like, it doesn't sound that great. The boys' plots never really felt deep. It, like, you knew exactly where they were going from the very beginning. I just feel like we really just breeze over the idea that the father is writing this because that's ridiculous. Having just read Interior Chinatown, I'm like, I feel like we could have gone in like a different direction with this. I think I would have been more interested in the book that I thought this book was going into it. I would say, if this book interests you and you have not read Lessons in Chemistry, which I think is very unlikely, I would recommend you read Lessons in Chemistry instead. It's more showing instead of telling. It is more nuanced in the way that it is telling you these things. It's not like blunt force trauma to the head. And I think it has characters that you're gonna care about more. I think that there's so many better choices that could have been made. I wish we spent more time actually like dealing with like on the set of the TV show, or actually talking about the different scripts that they're trying to write for this ending, instead of just saying, oh, it was hard to write. For Rachel, I would say you are a very busy person. I would not prioritize this on your TBR at all. I think that there are other books that are going to scratch this itch a little bit more, whether the itch you were going for is behind the scenes of a TV show or women's lib in historical fiction. I think there's more stuff out there we could find for you. I think I was looking for what this book was looking for, and it didn't necessarily fulfill those things. I don't think it was as deep as it wanted to be. It's not bad. I didn't hate this book. I got through it fairly easily. I just don't think that it really stood out from the crowd.
So I have finished my old, new, borrowed, and blue books. So which of these do I recommend to Rachel and to you? My top recommendation from this is definitely going to be The Dream Hotel. I understand that this book is not perfect, but it does so much good. There's so much room for discussion, and I thought that this sci-fi experience was very layered. It was not one note. It's more than one idea rolled into one in a way that feels realistically complex. Does it have the perfect ending? No. But I think going into that, knowing it will be enough. My second most recommended would be The Ministry of Time. I think that this book kind of loses its way, but it doesn't lose its charm. And I think that that's fun. So if you're looking for a fun time to do with time travel that also has some discussions, I would still point you towards this. My third or my second least recommendation would be Into Thin Air. I think that this book factually tells the events of this, but I didn't find it particularly compelling. And as someone who doesn't know a whole lot about Everest, I didn't feel like I came away with something that I I learned other than, you know, man's hubris, I guess. And my lowest recommendation would be Meet the Newmans. I don't think that this book did what it set out to do. I think this concept could have been executed in a better way. And I just don't think there was much interesting to be gotten out of it afterwards. But I can show you one more thing before we go. I can finally show you my wedding present for Rachel and Chris. And here they are. Hello. I was really working to the last minute on these. I've made crochet dolls for a while. They're my favorite thing to make. I have been working through my injury on these. I've had tendinitis, and these have been my only project since then. I probably started these in April or something like that, and I've been working on them since. And if my arm was fully better, I definitely could have done them faster, but I'm pretty proud with the way that they turned out. Rachel will already have these, so I hope you like yourself. I think I'm gonna give her a little flower right here because the dress she was wearing in this picture has yellow flowers on it. Alrighty, that is it from me today, guys. Congratulations, Rachel and Chris. So very happy for you. I hope you had a fun time on your honeymoon. And if you are still watching this video, please let me know down below what you thought of any of these books. And if you could get someone to test out books for your TBR, what books would you want someone to guinea pig for you? These are some books that I would want people to guinea pig test for me before I figure out if I actually want to read them or not. But again, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to find me anywhere, you can find me at the links in the description. I have a giveaway going on Instagram right now of LibroFM audiobooks that I think you can still join. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. I'd love to have you around. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.